Good morning, students. Myself, Dr. Vijayendra Singh Tamar, Associate Professor in English, presently posted at Government College, Gudha. Today, we will take up a new poem for BA Part 3rd, English Literature Paper 1st. The title of the poem is Poetry Always Worthy When It Is Old? Actually, it is not a separate poem. It is a collection of 6 stanzas. In 6 stanzas, and the translation is not of one poet but of 3 poets. So first of all, let me give you some brief information about the poem. Then we will take up each selection or each stanza one by one. The poem is a selection and collection of 6 parts. John Bro has translated it from Sanskrit into English. The thought contained in this poem, the idea which has been presented in this poem, has been taken from 3 poets. Number 1 is Kalidas, Bhaghuti, and Bhartari. Kalidas composed the first section, which consists of 4 lines. Bhaghuti, the second section, which also consists of 4 lines. And rest of the stanza, that is stanza number 3rd to 6, of various lengths, they have been composed by Bhartari. As I have told you, it is translation. The translation has been done by John Bro, an English poet, from Sanskrit into English. And in all the 3 sections, the poet has stated as I have told you, this is a translation, and translation is done by John Bro. All the 3 poets who have been translated, they give one message. Message is the time is a filtering device. If anything happens to remain with the passage of time, it means it has something in it. It is something valuable. The last section, that is the 6th stanza, has a different theme. It is about the theme of the 6th stanza is love and that exists between husband and wife. The poet talks about different opinions ranging from the plaintive to the cold and loveless attitude of the wife towards husband's departure. That is different theme. Otherwise, the whole poem contains or concentrates on one theme, that is of time, with the passage of time. Now let us come to the poem about the first poem. As you know, this poem is a translation. We have to keep in view. Now let us take the first. For the benefit of students, I told you one thing you should keep in mind, that what I have done, I have given you the text of the whole poem on each slide. For example, in slide number 1, this is 3rd slide, of which I am going to give you explanation. The first part, that is the first 4 lines, have been given, which are translated by John Bro. What the poet says, that he says, is poetry always worthy when it is old? And you know, this is the title of the poem also. Here the poet has put forward a question. He has asked whether a poet becomes valuable. What means valuable, important, if it passes the test of time, it becomes old. The second question is, and is it worthless then because it is new? If it is a new poem, it is just composed, and it means it is useless. These are two questions. The poet wants to know the answer of these two questions. He does not answer himself. He leaves it up to the reader. The reader, it is reader who will decide the answer, because we know that it is the person who is important, who reads the poem. It may be good opinion of the person or maybe wrong opinion about the poem. Reader, decide yourself if this be true. It is the reader who will decide, because it depends on individual. The same poem may be liked by a person and not liked by other person. This happens. Fools suspend judgment. There are some people, the poet has called fools those people who do not take themselves decision, but they delay, they postpone judgment, waiting to be told. They wait that Mr. So and so expert will come and he will give you the answer that this is good poem, this is bad poem. The poet calls such readers fools. He says it is the reader who will decide whether a poem is good or bad, not to be told by any other person. This is first part of the first section of the poem, and it was composed by Kalidas and translated by John Brough. Now let us come to the second section, that also consists of 4 lines, and those 4 lines, as you know, gives the idea of bhavbhuti. He says, if learned critics publicly deride means criticize, make fun of, laugh at me. Suppose what the poet wants to say, suppose he has composed some poems and learned critics, he has made a comments on such critics who think themselves learned, but they are unable to understand the message given by the poet. So they criticize the poem composed by the poet publicly. The poet says he doesn't care for them. He does not bother about it. My verse. Well, let them criticize him. Not for them I wrote. Wrote means written, composed. He has not composed his poems for such learned critics, because the poet is very hopeful and optimistic. He says, one day a man shall live to share my thought. He is quite hopeful that a day will come in future when a person will be able to understand, know the real message given by him in his poem, and he will share his thought. For time is endless and the world is wide. Because time does not come to an end after some time, but it will continue. It is eternal. And the poet is quite hopeful that these learned critics do not form the whole world. There is world after these learned critics, and a time will come when his poem will be appreciated and admired by persons. The poet is quite hopeful, and it shows the optimism of the poet. So this is a poem composed by Bharthari. About Bhavbhuti. Bhavbhuti was the learned critics of the 8th century of India, and you know, he has also written many plays in Sanskrit like Kalidas. He has been unanimously acclaimed as an eminent Sanskrit poet, second only to Kalidas, whose first stanza we just read. His works are notable for their suspense and vivid characterization. That is, he was a playwright, so he wrote plays which ends on suspense. And his famous plays were Mahavir Charitam, Malti Madhvam, and Uttam Ramcharitam. These were the plays, and beside these plays, he has written some slokas also. So he was a great poet, and he has given a great message also. Now let us come to the Next portion of the poem, as I have told you, the third section consists of 4 stanza of unequal lengths. Now first take up the first stanza of the third section or the third stanza of the poem. It consists of 4 lines, and he says, "Oh, this is composed by Bharthari." Bharthari is regarded as one of the original philosophers of India. He is known as a grammarian and a Sanskrit poet. It is said that he lived in later half of the 5th century. But his works have great philosophical significance, especially with regard to the connection they put forward between grammar, logic, semantics, and ontology. About him, it is said that he was a king, his wife, his queen, had an affair with somebody else. Because of that, he left his kingdom and became a saint. And then, as a scholar, he composed many works which are very beneficial for the mankind. So, in this part, which we are going to read now, of what use is the poet's weapon, of what use is bowman's dart, unless another sense is real when it sticks peering to the heart. The poet says that if a poem and an arrow do not do their job, they are useless. A poem is written that when a reader reads it, he should be perturbed, he should be impressed by that idea. If a poem does not do that, it means that poem is useless. Similarly, an arrow is hit to a person, it injured the victim's heart and causes pain. If it doesn't do, it is useless, that arrow is useless. The idea is, if a person has composed a poem and put forward an idea, and if it does not impress the reader, it means it is useless. It is of no use. Real success of a poem or arrow lies in moving the senses of the affected person by sticking in the heart. If this does not take place, it means the poem does not have intrinsic worth, does not have that value. The poem is useless. This was the third. Now let us take the fourth stanza of the poem. The fourth selection comprises of 10 lines. In this stanza, the poet presents a practical and true observation of the ways in which lesser critics react to poetry. Lesser critics means who do not have depth of knowledge. They have superficial knowledge and they become judge. They decide the poetry written by others. The poet calls them scoundrels, dishonest person, because they do not have any intelligence to compose even a single line, but they are showing themselves or pretends themselves to be the great judge. So he calls them scoundrels, dishonest persons. They are wit to fit a word or two of words together. They cannot compose even a 1 or 2 line. Are daunted not a whit. Daunted not a whit. They are not discouraged. They are eager to sit in judgment on the abstruse poetry of another. Abstruse is difficult to understand. Means the poem which is composed by the poet, which is very difficult to understand for a person. But these scoundrels, dishonest critics, they sit and judge that poem. Such men will listen with attentive mind. They will pay attention, listen everything very attentively, alert to see how many faults they find. They concentrate only on one thing, that how many weaknesses, faults they can find in the poem which they are going to analyze. If they are vexed because they fail to grasp the sense, and angry, if they become angry because they are unable to understand the message given by the poet of works conceived for readers of intelligence, because that message can be understood only by person who are intelligent, and these people are dishonest people. They are not, you can say, intelligent. They naturally do not blame their foolishness. They will criticize that this poem is useless. It does not have any message, doesn't have any content. They will not show the people or tell the people that they are foolish and they are unable to decode the meaning given by the poet. And the poet complete this passage with a proverb: a girl who's less than perfect always blames the dress. When a girl who is not beautiful, she will not blame her personality, but will blame the dress, that because of this dress, she does not appear beautiful. This line has become very a proverb. As you know, you must have heard Naach na jane angan teta. So these people are highly criticized by the poet. This scoundrel should keep in view that they are not really good people. They are dishonest people. Is this the line contains sarcastic comments on such people. Now let us come to the stanza number 5th. In this stanza, 5th stanza comprises of 6 lines. The poet presents a realistic picture of human life. He says that it is said that a person lives for 100 years. 100 years is a very long time, but the poet presents as the different aspect of this fact. He says a man lives long who lives 100 years. It is said that a person who lives for 100 years has a span, very long span of life of 100 years. But the reality is this: yet half is sleep and half the rest again. But such persons should keep in mind that a person who lives 100 years spent half of his time in sleeping and taking rest, old age and childhood, and out of that, that half he spent some time in old age and childhood, that is of no use. For the rest, a man lives close companion to disease and tears, and rest of the period which is left after childhood, old age, rest, sleep, he has to spend in disease. He becomes ill, and also tears means he suffers pain, sorrow in life, losing his love, working for other men, and sometimes he suffers in love and also works for other person. If we minus all these time which are spent by a person, that is in sleeping, resting, old age, childhood, working for other people, disease, sorrow, suffering, etc. If we minus them from 100 years, nothing, how much is left you can imagine. The poet puts the question, where can joy find a space in this short span? The idea is, if we really think, we will not find any time which we can say conclusively that this is the time a person lives happily in his long life. Man's life is always full of sorrows and suffering. In short, we can say the poet has presented a pessimistic picture of the existence of human life in the world in this stanza in a very effective and realistic manner. Now let us come to the last stanza. The last stanza, that is the 6th stanza of the poem, it consists of 7 lines. In this selection, the poet focuses on conjugal love, that is married love between husband and wife. The situation is husband is going away, and as the husband is departing, the wife has to say something. She imagines different options that she should say this, that, etc., etc. but she finds all will be inappropriate. They will not fit in the situation. The stanza shows that Bhartari was a psychologist. He knew the psychology of women. So the first situation he says, do not go, I could say. Who is I? I is the wife who has to comment, who has to speak as her husband is going away, departing from her. But this is inauspicious. Suppose in the first line, the author says or the poet says, if she happens to decides that she will say, do not go, she will ask her husband that you should not go, it will be inauspicious, means ill omen. It will not be favorable. It is unfavorable. Abshubh माना जाएगा. So it will not be good to say, do not go. Then the second option is, all right, go. It is a loveless thing to say. If she decides to say, all right, go, okay, so go you, if you are departing, then go. If she says this will appear as a loveless, that she has no feeling in her heart for her husband. It doesn't matter whether he stays or goes away. Again, this is not the good to say this. Then she's third option, stay with me is imperious. If she says, stay with me, do not go, live with her, it will appear that she is proud and arrogant and she expects that her order should be obeyed. Or the fourth option, do as you wish. If she says, she decides that, okay, do whatever you want to do. Suggest cold indifference, that is loveless indifference. It doesn't matter whether she is in the company of husband or not. And if I say I will die, if she decides to say that she will die when you are gone, you might or might not believe. She will not be believed in. The idea is, in spite of many options, she does not find even a single suitable option. Teach me, my husband, what I ought to say when you go away. So after the wife asks her husband that she is not in a position to decide what to say. So she asks her husband to teach her so that she can use the appropriate thing, appropriate statement in this situation. The idea is, after considering all options, she decides to ask her husband to teach her what she should say when he is departing from her. This stanza shows that Bhartari knows the psychology of the women very well. He knows the ways of the world. He is aptly called a practical philosopher, and he has described the husband-wife relationship in a romantic manner, but also in a sensible and matter-of-fact way. The idea is, what the poet has stated is absolutely